Entities. We deal with all sorts of transactions, and sometimes the seller, the buyer, the borrower are using an entity, whether it's an LLC, a corporation, a partnership, or even a trust. And title is going to require certain documentation in order to clear those entities. More times than not, what we receive isn't exactly what we're asking for. So what I wanted to go over today is, what does title require based on the type of entity we're dealing with? What is the exact documentation that we need and why? LLCs, or limited liability companies. Now remember, right now I'm talking strictly if these corporations, LLCs, if they're doing business in the state of California. If they're an entity outside of California, that's for another video. But LLCs, what do we need? We need an operating agreement. On the operating agreement, it's going to tell us who's authorized to sign on behalf of that LLC. So it's either going to be a member or a managing member, or it might be multiple members or managing members. But we definitely need the operating agreement. The other document is a certificate of good standing. Now, you can send that to us, but more times than not, or actually every time, we're going to run the name of that LLC with the Secretary of State and verify that they are in good standing. If they're not in good standing, then that LLC is going to have to contact the Secretary of State and do what it takes to get in good standing before they can sell or borrow against the property. Corporations. On a corporation, we're going to require the bylaws. The bylaws are going to tell us who is authorized to sign on behalf of that corporation. It's going to be most likely a president, the CEO, whatever it is. It's going to state that in the bylaws. In addition to the bylaws, we're going to require a corporate resolution, but it needs to be specific to the transaction. So what a corporate resolution is it's where the shareholders agree on selling the property. They're going to agree on the sales price, and it's going to list the sales price, the property address, and it's going to say that they agreed to the sale of the property. And so we got the bylaws and the corporate resolution, and then again, we are going to also run the corporation with the Secretary of State, and they need to be in good standing. Partnerships, there's two of them, limited partnership and general partnership. Most of the time we're dealing with limited. With limited partnerships, we will run them with the Secretary of State to make sure they are in good standing, and we'll require a limited partnership agreement to state who can sign on behalf of the limited partnership. With the general partnership, we will require the general partnership agreement, but we don't have to run them with the Secretary of State. They are not required to file with the Secretary of State. Trusts, very common. We see lots of trusts and title. Anytime we're dealing with a trust, the only time we're really going to require a full copy of the trust is if one of the original trustees, or both, or all, or however many original trustees there are, if any of them are deceased. If there's a deceased or an incapacitated trustee, then yes, we will require a full copy of the trust. And the reason for that is we need to see who is the successor trustee. We need to figure out what the requirements are if they are incapacitated, how that we verify the incapacitation, and then what will be required. More times than not, the trust will require two letters from physicians confirming the incapacitation, and then it will state who can sign on behalf of the trust, the successor trustee, once the incapacitation is verified. And same if we're dealing with a death. So if somebody is deceased, one of the trustees or both of the trustees, then we're dealing with the successor trustee. Sometimes there's one, sometimes there's multiple. Sometimes they're listed in a specific order. So if the top person can't do it, then it goes down to the second, to the third. Or sometimes they require all of them to sign. So anytime we're dealing with the trust, the only time we're going to require the full copy is, again, upon death or incapacitation. But if neither are the case, if we don't have death or incapacitation and the property is in the trust, the only thing we're going to require is a current trust certification. Escrow will draw it up and have the current trustees sign it, and that's pretty much it. Every file is a little bit different, but for the most part, that's all we would require. So to summarize all this, when we're dealing with any type of entities, whether it's an LLC, a trust, a corporation, whatever, the main thing we're trying to figure out is who's authorized to sign. If one of the parties is deceased, if one of the parties is incapacitated, then who can sign on their behalf. We need to make sure that everyone's in active status and everything's current. If we're dealing with a trust, that there's been no amendments. If there have been amendments and someone is deceased, we want to see all the amendments, whatever it is. But anyways, this is just a quick summary. If you have more specific questions, you know where to find me. Reach out anytime and I'm happy to help. Thank you.